This story is titled, My Parents Plotted to Trick Me into Paying for a Family Trip to the Bahamas, so I Turned the Tables on Them. Hi everyone, before we dive in, a quick favor. If you enjoy content like this, please hit the subscribe button. It's free, supports the channel, and makes sure you never miss out on amazing videos. Alright, let's get started. Alright, here's the deal. I'm 25, male, and until last year I thought I was doing pretty well for myself. I had a decent job in tech, a tiny but comfortable apartment, and I was handling my own life without any handouts. But my parents somehow managed to pull me back into their chaotic orbit, all because of my older brother Mike. Now, let me set the stage here. Mike is 27 and still living at home. He's been figuring things out since he was 17. High school? Barely graduated. College? He's been through 3. The first one booted him out for failing nearly every class except for gym, and the second gave him the boot because of disciplinary issues. He says it was because the professors didn't understand his creative approach to deadlines. But come on, we all know that's code for partying too much and skipping assignments. I can't even remember the deal with the third one, or the excuse he'd made. Jobs? Oh, those are a joke. Mike's job history is basically a revolving door. He worked at an electronics store for a while but got caught giving discounts to his friends. Then he tried being a barista, but quit because the customers were too demanding. His most recent gig was at a gym, where he lasted 2 weeks before declaring that early shifts were toxic to his lifestyle. Meanwhile, there's me. I worked my butt off through college, juggling part-time jobs and scholarships to graduate debt-free. I've got a solid job, pay my own bills, and even managed to start building up some savings. But apparently, in my family, being the responsible one doesn't mean you get a pat on the back. It means you're the one they call when they need something. So last year, my parents invited me over for Sunday dinner. No big deal, they do that a lot. My mom makes this amazing lasagna, and my dad likes to grill me about my plans for the future while sipping on his iced tea. It's their thing, but this time I could tell something was different. We're halfway through dinner, and Mom hits me with this. Lucas, honey, we've been thinking, wouldn't it be nice if you moved back home for a while? I almost choked on my garlic bread. What? Why would I do that? Well, she said in her best soothing voice. It just makes sense. Housing prices are insane, and rent is throwing money away. If you moved back, you could save so much for the future. Dad nodded like he was in on some genius plan. Exactly. You're young, Lucas. This is the time to be smart with your money. Plus, you'd be helping out the family. There it was. The guilt trip. My parents are masters at this. They've been playing the family helps family card for as long as I can remember. When Mike wrecked Dad's car as a teenager, family helps family, Lucas. When Mike needed money for books, which I later found out went towards some gaming console, family helps family, Lucas. Still, they made it sound so logical. It'd only be for a little while, Mom added. And it's not like you wouldn't be contributing, just a small amount for rent and groceries. Way less than you're paying for that apartment of yours. I didn't say yes right away. I mean, I liked my apartment. It was tiny, sure, but it was mine. No one nagging me about dishes in the sink, no random family drama, and definitely no Mike bumming around in his pajama pants at 2 p.m. But I also couldn't deny they had a point. Rent was eating up a big chunk of my paycheck, and moving back home could give me a chance to save up. Just think about it, Mom said, flashing that hopeful smile she always uses when she wants me to agree to something. No rush. I spent the next few days mulling it over. On paper, it made sense. I could save money, maybe even enough for a down payment on a house someday. And yeah, part of me thought it might be a chance to reconnect with my family. Things had been a little distant between us since I moved out, and maybe this could fix that. So, after a lot of back and forth in my head, I called Mom and said I'd do it. She sounded thrilled. Oh, Lucas, you won't regret this. It'll be so nice to have the family together again. Looking back, that should have been my first red flag. She sounded way too excited about what was supposed to be me helping out the family. But at the time, I didn't think much of it. I figured they were just happy to have me around again. I moved back in the next weekend. They gave me my old room, which hadn't changed much since high school. Same twin bed, same posters on the wall. It was a little weird, but I told myself it was temporary. For the first few weeks, everything seemed fine. I paid a small rent payment, way less than what I'd been paying for my apartment, and helped out with groceries. It wasn't ideal, but it wasn't terrible either. I told myself I'd made the right decision. Mom would gush about how nice it was to have me back, and Dad kept saying things like, "It's good for the family to stick together." Even Mike was weirdly pleasant at first, cracking jokes and actually cleaning up after himself once or twice. But in hindsight, I should have known better. My parents are pros at making things seem fine on the surface, while quietly pulling the strings behind the scene. And Mike? Well, Mike's just Mike. He's been riding the family gravy train for years, and I should have realized that my return was just another stop on his endless ride. At the time, though, I was optimistic. I thought this could actually work. I thought I was helping my family while helping myself. But, as you've probably guessed, it didn't take long for things to start feeling off. It started small, little things here and there. For example, Mike's room suddenly got a serious upgrade. I walked past his door one day and saw him setting up a huge flat-screen TV on his wall. His desk had a brand new gaming PC, complete with one of those ridiculous chairs that light up. I asked him where he got the money for all that, and he just shrugged. "I've been saving," he said, without even looking up. Saving from what? I wanted to ask, but I let it go. Maybe he had saved up. Stranger things have happened. But then there was the fridge situation. Every time I bought groceries, it felt like they disappeared within 48 hours. I'd stock up on basics, eggs, milk, bread, a few snacks, and the next day I'd find Mike chowing down on a sandwich the size of my head with half the loaf of bread gone. "Did you eat the last of the eggs?" I asked him one morning. "Yeah," he said casually, scrolling on his phone. "I made an omelet. You want me to pick up more or something?" I stared at him, speechless. The guy hadn't bought groceries in years, and now he was acting like it was a minor inconvenience for me to ask. I told Mom about it later, and she just laughed. "Oh, you know Mike. He doesn't think about those things." I'll remind him. Then came the delivery. Every other day, it seemed like Mike was getting a package. Shoes, clothes, random gadgets, stuff he clearly didn't need. Once, a delivery guy handed him a massive box that turned out to be a brand new sound system. He was practically giddy setting it up. "Where's all this money coming from?" I asked, trying not to sound too accusatory. "Oh, here and there," he said vaguely. Here and there apparently meant my wallet, because the next time I went to do the grocery run, Mom handed me her card and said, "Use this for the family stuff, and if there's anything extra, just cover it. I'll pay you back later." I didn't think much of it at first. I figured it was one of those, "we'll square it up later" kind of deals, but later never came. By the time I realized she wasn't keeping track, I'd already covered hundreds of dollars worth of groceries. And then there was the rent situation. When I first moved back, we'd agreed on a small, fixed amount I'd pay each month. But about 2 months in, Mom said, "Lucas, I hate to ask, but could you help a little more this month? Things are tight right now?" "Sure," I said, figuring it was a one-time thing. Except it wasn't. The little extra became the new normal, and suddenly, I was paying almost as much as I had been for my apartment. When I brought it up, Dad said, "It's just temporary. You're in a better financial position than we are right now, and it's good for the family." That phrase, "good for the family," was starting to sound like a broken record. It wasn't just the money, though. It was the whole vibe. I started noticing how everything revolved around Mike. If he wanted something, my parents bent over backward to get it for him. If he needed to borrow the car, no problem. If he wanted to have friends over for a movie night, Mom made snacks and told me to be flexible about the noise. Meanwhile, if I so much as left a dish in the sink, I got a passive-aggressive comment about how we all need to pitch in. One time, I overheard Mom on the phone with her sister, bragging about how Mike's finally getting his act together. She went on and on about his plans to start a business. Some vague idea about creating custom sneakers or something. "Lucas is helping us keep things stable," she said, as if my contributions were just some side note in the grand saga of Mike's life. That was it. I walked upstairs, shut my door, and sat on my bed, fuming. How had I let things get to this point? I was busting my ass at work, paying for everything, and dealing with this nonsense, while Mike got to coast through life like it was one big vacation. I started replaying everything in my head. Mike's new TV, the groceries disappearing, the constant deliveries, the never-ending rent hikes. It all started to click. This wasn't about helping the family. This was about me funding their lifestyle, with Mike as the star player, and me as the background character keeping the lights on. The next day, I tried talking to my parents about it. I sat them down and said, "Look, I feel like I'm contributing a lot more than we originally agreed on. Can we go back to what we talked about in the beginning?" Mom gave me her usual sweet smile. "Oh, Lucas, we're so grateful for everything you're doing. It's just that things are a little tough right now. You know how it is." Dad added, "It's not forever, just until we get back on our feet." They always had an excuse. Always. And every time, they made it sound like I was the bad guy for even bringing it up. After that conversation, I started paying closer attention to how things were being handled. I noticed how often Mom and Dad would whisper to each other when they thought I wasn't listening. I saw how Mike seemed to have an endless supply of new projects that required my parents' financial support. And I realized something else. This wasn't going to stop. They weren't planning to get back on their feet. They were planning to keep leaning on me for as long as I let them. But I wasn't going to let them. Not anymore. The final straw happened one Friday night. It was supposed to be my time to unwind. After another long, exhausting week at work, I was looking forward to a quiet evening. Maybe grab some takeout, watch something mindless, and recharge. But of course, nothing is ever simple when it comes to my family. I walked into the house and was greeted by chaos. The living room looked like a frat party aftermath. Empty soda cans and chip bags were everywhere. And Max, Mike's hyperactive dog, was barking his head off at some random noise outside. Mike was sprawled on the couch, his feet up on the coffee table, gaming as usual. "Hey," I said, dropping my bag by the door. "Can you clean this up? It's disgusting in here." He barely glanced at me. Yeah, I'll get to it later," he mumbled, his eyes glued to the TV screen. "Not later," I said, louder this time. "Now. I've been at work all day, and the last thing I want to do is come home to this mess." "Dude, chill," he said, pausing his game. "It's just a few cans. Why are you so uptight all the time?" I felt my patience snap. "Uptight? Mike, this isn't just about a few cans. It's every damn day. I'm working my ass off while you sit around doing nothing, and you can't even clean up after yourself? What's your problem?" he shot back, standing up. "You moved back in, not me. No one asked you to play housemaid." We were yelling at this point, and Max, clearly not a fan of the noise, started barking even louder. "Are you serious right now?" I shouted. "I've been paying rent, buying groceries, covering bills, and you think I'm just being a maid? You've been mooching off mom and dad for years, and now you're trying to act like I'm the problem?" Mike rolled his eyes and waved me off. "Oh, here we go again. Poor Lucas, always so responsible. You're not a saint, dude. If you don't like it, leave. No one's forcing you to stay." That hit harder than I expected. "You know what?" I said, shaking my head. "You're right. I don't have to stay. And I'm done." He looked surprised for a second, but quickly masked it with a smirk. "Good. Don't let the door hit you on the way out." I stormed upstairs, slamming my door behind me. I wasn't going to back down this time. I grabbed my duffel bag and started packing. I didn't care if it was late or inconvenient. I was done. As I threw clothes and essentials into my bag, I couldn't stop replaying the argument in my head. How had I let it get to this point? Why had I stayed as long as I did? The answers didn't matter anymore. I just knew I wasn't going to spend another night under this roof. I carried my duffel bag downstairs, ready to leave, but just as I reached the bottom step, I heard the front door open. Mom and Dad were back from their dinner. "Oh, Lucas, what are you doing?" Mom asked, her cheerful tone shifting to confusion as she noticed my bag. "I'm leaving," I said flatly. "What?" she asked, stepping closer. "Why? What happened?" Before I could respond, Mike came into the room, still wearing his smug expression from earlier. "He's just being dramatic," he said, leaning against the wall. Mom's face fell. "Dramatic? Mike, what did you do?" "Nothing," he said defensively. "We had a little argument, and now he's blowing it way out of proportion." I couldn't help but laugh bitterly. "A little argument? You told me no one asked me to stay, and that I should just leave if I don't like it. So, here I am, leaving." Mom turned to Mike, her voice dropping to that soft, serious tone she uses when she's trying to keep things calm. "Mike, you need to apologize to your brother." "For what?" Mike said, crossing his arms. "For making him feel unwelcome," she said firmly. "We need Lucas here. He's been helping out so much, and it's not fair to push him away like this." Dad, who had been quiet up until now, added, "She's right. If Lucas leaves, it's going to make things a lot harder for all of us. You need to make this right, Mike." Mike groaned. "Fine, I'll apologize. Whatever." I stood there, staring at them in disbelief. They weren't asking him to apologize because they cared about me or wanted me to feel appreciated. They were asking because they needed me to stay, so they could keep taking advantage of me. All those months of thinking I was helping my family, of hoping that maybe we were reconnecting, and it all boiled down to this. I was just their meal ticket. "Don't bother," I said, slinging my bag over my shoulder. "I'm not staying, and no fake apology is going to change my mind." "Lucas, wait," Mom said, stepping in front of me. "We can work this out. Let's just sit down and talk." "No," I said firmly. "I'm done. I've had enough." Mom's face fell, and for a moment, she looked genuinely upset. But then she straightened up and said, "You're being unreasonable. We're a family, Lucas." "Exactly," I said. "Families help each other. But that's not what's happening here. This is one-sided, and I'm done playing along." I walked past her and opened the door. As I stepped outside, I heard Mike mutter, "Whatever. He'll be back." I didn't bother responding. I just walked out to my car, threw my bag in the back seat, and drove off. That night, I crashed at my friend Jake's place. He didn't even ask questions. He just handed me a blanket and said, "Stay as long as you need." Lying on his couch, I felt lighter than I had in months. For the first time in what felt like forever, I wasn't carrying the weight of my family's expectations on my shoulders. I knew they'd blow up my phone the next day, and they did. But I didn't care. A couple of months after I moved out, I was finally starting to feel normal again. Living at my buddy Jake's place had been a lifesaver, and I'd eventually found my own apartment, a small but cozy spot that didn't come with all the strings attached to living with my family. I was settling into a routine, and life was peaceful. Then one day I got a call from Mom. I didn't pick up at first because, honestly, I wasn't in the mood for one of her guilt trips. But she left a voicemail, so I opened it later. "Hi, Lucas. It's Mom. I just wanted to talk. We've been thinking about you and really miss having you around. We know things got tense, but we want to make it up to you. Give me a call back when you can. Love you." That "love you" at the end felt so forced it made my skin crawl. Still, I figured I should at least hear her out. Maybe this was an olive branch. So I called her back. She answered on the first ring, her voice syrupy sweet. "Lucas, I'm so glad you called. How are you?" "Fine," I said cautiously. "What's up?" "Well," she started, drawing the word out. "We've been talking, and we realized we didn't treat you very fairly when you were living here, and we feel awful about it. I wasn't buying it." "Uh-huh. So," she continued, "we were thinking we could do something special as a family. You know, to reconnect and make things right. What do you think about a luxury family vacation?" Now, if this had been anyone else, I might have been excited. Who doesn't love a good vacation? But this was my family, and I knew better than to trust anything that sounded too good to be true. Still, I played along. I don't know," I said. "What kind of vacation?" "A tropical getaway," she said, her voice practically dripping with enthusiasm. "Beautiful beaches, amazing food, relaxation. It'll be perfect. We were thinking of a resort in the Bahamas. What do you think?" I hesitated. It was tempting. A vacation like that sounded amazing, and honestly, I could use the break. But this was my parents, and they didn't have a great track record when it came to being upfront about things. "Okay," I said cautiously. "Let me think about it." "Oh, wonderful," she said, clearly trying to hide her eagerness. "Take your time, but let us know soon so we can start planning." There was no way this was as innocent as it seemed. My family didn't just want to reconnect, they wanted something. And considering how things had gone before, I had a pretty good idea of what it was. Still, I figured I'd stop by their place to hear the full pitch. If nothing else, it might be entertaining. So, a few days later, I drove over to the house. When I got there, everything seemed normal. Too normal. Mom greeted me at the door with her usual over-the-top enthusiasm. Dad was sitting in his recliner looking perfectly content, and Mike was nowhere to be seen. It was like they were trying to set the stage for the perfect family moment. We sat down in the living room, and Mom launched into her sales pitch. She talked about how much she missed me, how important family was, and how this trip could be a fresh start for all of us. She even threw in a few guilt-laced lines like, "Family is all we've got, Lucas," and "We just want to make it up to you." Dad chimed in with his usual practical angle. "It's a great opportunity for us to bond. And Lucas, you've been working so hard. You deserve a break." I stayed quiet, nodding occasionally, letting them do their thing. But as the conversation went on, it became clear they were trying way too hard. Eventually, I said, "Okay, so how's this going to work?" Mom smiled. "We were thinking it'd be easiest if you handled the booking. We'll give you all the details, dates, preferences, that kind of thing, and you can book it. Then we'll pay you back right after." "Right after?" I asked, raising an eyebrow. "Yes, of course," she said quickly. "We just thought it'd be simpler for one person to coordinate everything." At that moment, I heard the garage door open. Mike had arrived. I wasn't planning to stick around. Sure enough, as I was heading toward the door, I overheard them talking in the kitchen. "Once Lucas agrees to book everything," Mom said, "we'll promise to pay him back, but we won't." Mike's voice chimed in, laughing. "He owes us anyway." And then Dad, "He'll get over it, like always. He's got the money." I stood there for a moment, stunned but not entirely surprised. This wasn't about reconnecting. It was just another scheme to use me, like always. I left without saying goodbye and started planning my next move. If they wanted me to book a trip, I'd give them a trip, all right. But it wasn't going to be the one they expected. This time, I was going to turn the tables. The plan started forming almost immediately. I'd agree to book the trip, but it wasn't going to go the way they thought. Let's just say, they were about to learn what happens when you underestimate the guy who's been paying attention all along. When I got home, I called Mom and said, "Okay, I'll do it. Send me everyone's preferences, and I'll handle the booking." "Oh, Lucas, thank you so much," she gushed. "We knew you'd come around. This is going to be so wonderful." "All right, so here's the thing. When I agreed to book the trip, my parents thought they'd already won. But I wasn't going to let that happen. Not this time. If they wanted to trick me, I'd give them a trick they'd never forget. The first step was to keep everything calm and normal. I couldn't let them suspect I was onto them. So, when Mom started bombarding me with texts about dates, preferences, and room types, I played along. Sure, Mom, sounds great. I'll handle it. She even called me a few times to double-check that I was still okay paying up front, but I stayed cool. Yeah, no problem. I've got it covered. She probably thought I was the perfect sucker. Once I had all their details, dates, flight times, room preferences, I got to work. Instead of booking a trip for 4 like they expected, I booked a trip for 1, me. I found an all-inclusive luxury resort in the Bahamas with a private villa, ocean views, and room service. The works. For the fake trip, I used my tech skills to whip up some pretty convincing reservations. I created fake itineraries for their hotel stays, making sure everything looked legit. I even added a little flair, things like complimentary breakfast and VIP check-in, to make it seem extra special. But here's where it gets better. I booked their flights using a travel agency that I knew allowed only the primary account holder, me, to make changes. That way, if or when they figured out the trick, I could cancel the flights with a single click. And of course, I gave them fake tickets that had the wrong departure time on them. Now I know what you're thinking. Lucas, this is a lot of effort just to mess with your family. And you'd be right. It was a lot. But after everything they'd put me through, I figured they deserved it. Plus, the satisfaction of knowing I was finally standing up for myself? Totally worth it. The day of the trip rolled around, and I made sure to keep up the act. I called Mom that morning to confirm the details. Your flight leaves at 11 a.m., I told her. Don't forget to get there early for security. And make sure you bring the printouts I sent you. Some airlines are picky about digital tickets. Oh, thank you, Lucas, she said, her voice dripping with gratitude. We're so excited. This is going to be the best trip ever. I could almost hear her smirking through the phone. Meanwhile, I was already packed and ready to go. My flight, on a completely different airline, was set to leave 2 hours earlier, so I made sure to head to the airport long before they would arrive. At the airport, I kept my phone on long enough to see Mom's "We're on our way" text pop up. I sent back a quick "Safe travels, can't wait to see you at the resort," before turning on airplane mode and boarding my flight. The resort was everything I'd hoped for and more. As soon as I got to my room, I took a picture of the view from my balcony and sent it to them with the caption, "Made it. Hope you're having a smooth trip." The satisfaction of knowing they had no idea what was coming was almost as good as the view. Almost. I knew they wouldn't realize anything was wrong until they got to the airport. Their fake flight tickets had the wrong departure time, 2 hours later than the real flight. By the time they showed up at the gate, the plane would already be in the air. I imagined the scene. Mom frantically waving the fake tickets at the airline staff, Dad grumbling about how, "This is why we don't let Lucas handle things," and Mike standing off to the side, probably scrolling on his phone, completely oblivious to the chaos. But that wasn't the best part. The best part was that once they realized the flight had left without them, they'd call me. And when they did, I'd be ready. Sure enough, my phone buzzed about an hour after their flight was supposed to depart. It was Mom. I let it ring. Then Dad called. I let that one ring too. Finally, Mike sent a text. "Dude, WTF? The flight's gone." I waited a few minutes before replying. "What do you mean? I'm at the resort. Didn't you get on the flight?" The response came almost immediately. "Our tickets don't work. They said the flight already left." I smiled and typed back, "That's weird. Everything was fine with my flight. Let me check on it when I get to Wi-Fi." Before I turned my phone back to airplane mode, I sent one last message to the group chat. A picture of me lounging by the pool, sunglasses on, drink in hand, with the caption, "Enjoy your vacation. Oh wait, guess it's just me this time. Cheers." And then I turned my phone off. The next few days were bliss. I swam, ate incredible food, and lounged in the sun without a single guilt trip or passive-aggressive comment from anyone. Knowing they were stuck at home trying to figure out what went wrong made it even better. Today's my last day here. I feel completely refreshed. But I also know the real fun is waiting for me back home. I'll update you soon after I get home. Update 1. All right, so let me tell you what happened when I got back from my solo luxury vacation. I knew the fallout was going to be epic, but even I wasn't prepared for how ridiculous my family's reaction would be. If you thought they were manipulative before, just wait. I flew back home after the most relaxing week of my life. The resort was perfect, and for once I felt like I'd treated myself the way I deserved. But as soon as I got to my apartment, I saw them. Yep, my parents and Mike were camped out right outside my door, like they were staging an intervention. Mom looked furious. Dad was red-faced and pacing, and Mike, well, he just looked annoyed, probably because he had to leave his PlayStation for this. The moment I stepped out of the elevator, Mom launched into it. "How could you do this to us, Lucas?" she practically shrieked. "We were standing at the airport like idiots. The tickets you gave us didn't work." Dad chimed in, pointing an accusing finger at me. "You embarrassed us in front of everyone. The airline staff said those tickets weren't even real. Do you have any idea how that made us look?" I unlocked my door calmly and said, "Oh, I know exactly how it made you look." Then I walked inside, leaving the door open because I knew they weren't going anywhere until they got their rant out. Mike was the last to enter, muttering, "This is so dumb," under his breath. For once, I agreed with him. "Sit down," I said, motioning to the couch. They didn't. Instead, Mom crossed her arms and stood in the middle of the living room, her face a mix of anger and frustration. "Why would you do this, Lucas?" she asked, her tone switching to the classic disappointed parent voice. "We just wanted to spend time with you as a family." I couldn't help but laugh. "Family? Really? You mean the same family that plotted to use me to pay for the whole trip? The same family that wasn't planning to pay me back? I overheard you in the kitchen, remember? Don't act like this was about reconnecting." Their faces went pale, and for a second, there was complete silence. Then Dad, ever the defensive one, said, "It was just a misunderstanding. We didn't mean it like that." "Oh, really?" I said, pulling out my phone. I tapped the screen a few times, then hit play. The recording I'd made of their kitchen conversation filled the room. I hit pause and slid my phone back into my pocket. "Still a misunderstanding?" I asked, looking directly at Dad. Mom opened her mouth, closed it, then opened it again like a fish gasping for air. Finally, she said, "That was taken out of context." I laughed harder this time. "Out of context? You literally said you weren't going to pay me back. How much clearer does it need to be?" Mike, who had been unusually quiet, finally spoke up. "Okay, fine. Maybe we were going to let you cover it, but it's not like you can't afford it. You're doing fine." I turned to him, my blood boiling. "Oh, I'm sorry, Mike. Is it my responsibility to fund your vacations now? Or does that only apply when Mom and Dad run out of money, bailing you out of whatever mess you've made this time?" "Don't talk to your brother like that," Mom snapped. "He's been working hard." "Working hard?" I interrupted, my voice rising. "At what? He hasn't worked a real job in years, but somehow he's always got new gadgets and trips planned. Meanwhile, I'm the one busting my ass. And you expect me to just hand over my money like it's nothing? Number not anymore." Dad tried to step in, his tone calmer, but still condescending. "Lucas, we're family. You shouldn't be airing our dirty laundry like this." That was the last straw. "You want to talk about family?" I said, my voice steady but sharp. "Family doesn't manipulate each other. Family doesn't treat one kid like an ATM, while letting the other coast through life without consequences. You don't get to pull the family card now, just because you're mad I didn't let you use me this time." They didn't have much to say after that. Mom tried to guilt me one last time, saying, "You've changed, Lucas. You're not the same person you used to be." "Yeah, I have changed," I said. "I've learned how to stand up for myself, and you're mad because you can't control me anymore." With that, I opened the door and gestured for them to leave. "We're not done talking about this," Dad said as he walked out. "Oh, I think we are," I replied, shutting the door behind them. The next day, the real fallout began. My phone started blowing up with messages from extended family and mutual friends, all saying some version of, "How could you treat your parents like that?" and "You're being so selfish." Apparently, Mom and Dad had wasted no time spreading their version of the story. According to them, I'd tricked them with fake tickets as some kind of cruel prank, leaving out the part where they were planning to screw me over in the first place. So now I'm thinking about getting back at them. I have something in mind. I'll update you guys after it's done. Update 2. Hey again, Reddit. Here's the update you've all been waiting for. After the chaos my family had caused, I decided to lay it all out there. No more secrets, no more pretending. I figured if my parents were going to tell their version of the story to everyone who would listen, I deserved to tell mine too. I had to set the record straight. So, I did what any sane person in this day and age would do. I took it to Facebook. I wrote a long, detailed post explaining everything. I started with how my parents convinced me to move back home under the guise of helping the family, only for them to slowly shift all the financial burdens onto me. I laid out how they'd been using me to bankroll Mike's lifestyle, while making me feel like I wasn't contributing enough. I didn't hold back. I described how I overheard their conversation about tricking me into paying for the vacation, how they had no intention of paying me back. Of course, I also included the part everyone was most curious about, my revenge. But here's where I really drove the point home. I attached the recording, the one where my parents and Mike spelled out their entire scheme, laughing about it. I made sure to preface the post with a clear disclaimer. This isn't to humiliate anyone. I'm sharing this because my parents have been spreading their side of the story, and I think it's only fair that my friends and family hear the truth. You can decide for yourselves who's in the wrong. I hit post and sat back, waiting to see what would happen. The reaction was immediate. Within an hour, the post had dozens of comments and shares. People who had initially bought my parents' sob story started backtracking fast. "I had no idea this was the full story," one cousin wrote. "I'm so sorry for judging you, Lucas. You were right to stand up for yourself." A family friend who'd known us since we were kids commented, "Wow, I always thought your parents favored Mike, but I didn't realize it was this bad. Good for you for getting out of that toxic situation." One of my mom's closest friends sent me a message saying, "I can't believe they did this to you. I'm so sorry I believed them without hearing your side first. You didn't deserve any of that." As for my parents, oh, they were furious. Mom left a series of comments on the post, all variations of, "I can't believe you're airing our private family matters online. You're making us look terrible." Dad's response was more threatening. He wrote, "You better take this down, Lucas. You're crossing a line, and you'll regret it." I didn't respond to either of them. Instead, I edited the post to include a short update at the bottom. For anyone wondering, I stand by everything I've said here. I won't be taking this post down, no matter how many threats or guilt trips I receive. Mike, unsurprisingly, stayed silent on the post itself, but he did send me a private message that said, "Wow, dude, really? You think this is okay?" I didn't bother replying to him either. Over the next few days, the fallout continued. More relatives and family friends reached out, some offering support, others trying to mediate. A few suggested I should be the bigger person and take the post down to avoid further conflict. But at that point, I wasn't interested in conflict resolution. I was interested in finally being free from their manipulation. The breaking point came when my parents showed up at my apartment again. I didn't let them in this time, but I stood in the doorway while Mom begged me to fix this mess. "You've ruined our reputation," she said, tears streaming down her face. "How could you do this to us, Lucas? We're your parents." "You ruined your own reputation," I told her. "All I did was tell the truth. If that embarrasses you, maybe you should take a hard look at your behavior instead of blaming me." With that, I closed the door. Later that day, I made one final post on Facebook. "I want to thank everyone who reached out with kind words and support. For those who think I went too far, I respect your opinion, but I stand by my decision to share the truth. To my family, I'm done. I've tried to help you, I've tried to set boundaries, and I've tried to be the bigger person. None of it has worked because you don't respect me or my contributions. From now on, I'm prioritizing my own well-being. Please don't call, text, or show up at my apartment. I'm moving forward with my life, and that doesn't include you." Then, after they saw my post, I blocked their numbers, unfriended them on Facebook, and set my profile to private. Life is quieter now, and I've been focusing on building relationships with people who actually respect and care about me. Cutting ties wasn't just the best decision for me, it was the only decision. To anyone reading this who's struggling with toxic family dynamics, you deserve peace, you deserve respect, and you deserve to put yourself first. Sometimes walking away is the most loving thing you can do for yourself. Thanks for sticking with me through all this wild ride. I'm finally free, and it feels incredible.